Now we start the final panel discussion for today, during which we're going to discuss cohesion at the local level during the war, about the unity and role of the communities in that process, of how to find it, how to restore it, or how to keep it. Whenever, luckily, the processes of unification are powerful. I am happy to introduce our speakers of this panel. All of them will be offline. Olena Shvydka, head of the Ivanivska community, Chernihiv Oblast. Serhii Peresunko, head of the Shyroke community, Mykolaiv. Yuriy Stepanets, of the executive director of the association Civic Initiatives. Antonella Valmorbida, general secretary, European Association of Local Democracy, and the moderator of this panel, Novosad, co-founder of the charitable foundation Safe Ed. So shall we start? Thank you, Yana. I hope you still have some energy for the last panel. As a moderator, I prefer to have very practical, that we can speak about the practical things, restoring the country, what are the instruments to keep the cohesion Yana discussed before. I'm happy that on today's panel we have the practitioners, because Olena and Serhii represent the communities that were damaged heavily from the Russian invasion. The regions were liberated in a different time. Duration of the occupation and shelling was different, and now the consequences and the scale are also different. The communities that require quite a lot of support. At the same time, they don't just sit and wait for this support to come from Kiev. They actively work on their own in order to involve it, and also with us, representatives of civil society, which is a very important element in preservation of Ukrainian statehood, and international partners. Critically important in a constructive way to build them in to that system and their story of restoration. Oleksandra Azarkhina is not here because at the same time the Ministry for Restoration has plays a critical role, and I would like to talk to her of how having such a central role, the Ministry of Restoration, by involvement of the resources, how to preserve all those achievements of decentralization, and how does the government plan to keep the right balance between the distribution of support for restoration, prioritization, as well as support of those whom it is needed for. However, as there is nobody from the government, we shall discuss the experience of communities in cooperation with the government these days. Olena, I will start from you. Your community in Chernihiv region, as everybody knows, what kind of terrible occupation, full-fledged invasion, full-scale invasion was sustained. And you are one of the leaders of the communities who is actively working, not even now, but from the first day of the occupation, liberation of the oblast, working on the restoration. Personally, myself and our foundation are working a lot in that community, and the oblast, this is physically visible, how this community and the municipalities of the Ivanivska community are changing every time when you pass by, when you drive by. Could you please share your experience of how did you organize this process? And how did you organize the process of interaction with the government? Can you involve resources from them? In which way? And what is effective, what is not? How do you interact with local partners? Whether in this ecosystem there is any role for the civil society? Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon. First, a few words about my community. My community is very small, 7,000 people, which is located next to Chernihiv city. It happened, regretfully, that we were in the occupation, not only in the occupation, also in the area of active armed hostilities. That occupation lasted very shortly, just for 1 month, yet over 1 month. We sustained a lot of suffering. Probably some communities did not sustain for the entire time of the occupation. Out of 4,000 of the houses, 2,500 have been destroyed or damaged. Mortality in the community increased compared to 2021 14 times. One village, all people of one community were taken into the cellar of the local school and kept them in that cellar. I can say even with no food and water, because what people could eat cannot be quoted as food. On the 30th of March 2022, they were taken out and they have escaped. At 5 o'clock, I'm coming back. There is my family standing by, and they're looking at me. I have no house. I have no relatives, because some of them have died, others have been killed. On the other side, thousands of eyes with the same situation, asking what to do. I myself, I don't know what to do in my own situation and what to start with. On that moment, I took the right decision. On 31st of March, in the morning, I brought together my community and requested support from people. I did not know who of the employees have remained, who of them did not. There was no contact, there was no nothing. And therefore, at the meeting with me, the entire village came, because the other villages have been mined, and there was no pathway. More than 1,000 people came for the meeting. I requested support from people. I requested people, let us come together and everybody will do what they can. We have created on 31st of March 2022, in my community, we created volunteer headquarters.
Зробили перепис населення.
And the first thing we did was population census. As I was surprised in my community in the occupation, we did not have 7,000 population, 9.5, because the community was joined by people from Chernihiv and Kiev to hide from the war. Every day, the volunteers made the population census to understand how to distribute humanitarian support. Yet, in a few months, that humanitarian support made the worst thing, made people quarreling to quarrel against each other, because humanitarian support is evil. In the month of September 2022, it was necessary to stop that train as soon as possible. They liberate Izium and Kupiansk, and also humanitarian aid was brought to my community. I take 2 empty buses, I open the doors, and I propose the people that they bring humanitarian aid from the people from Kupiansk. And from that time, my community began to help the others. Along with that, in the month of April, I saw my people leaving the place, because there was no place to live, there was no food, no schools. All the municipal property of the community has been destroyed completely or damaged. About 50% of the population have left the community. And here I was helped by the government, the Oblast administration, whom we asked material from, and the volunteers began to repair the homes. From that, there was the beginning of reconstruction. Every volunteer who came to the community brought with them the friends, the relatives, and in such a way, in our community, we could sign more than 40 memoranda with various foundations, international organizations, and we began to reconstruct. The purpose was...
Our goal, the first thing we had to do is healthcare institutions. We quickly restored them to clinics. Unfortunately, the medical care points were destroyed. We had 2 before. And to return the population, we needed educational institutions, without which no one would return. It was our goal, and everyone worked for this purpose. The donors, the community, and people, parents, just normal residents were repairing our schools. And on the 1st of September, of 2022, all our schools, all the schools started working offline. And on 2022, after the census, 80% of the population returned home. It was so-called victory, or at least so we called it. Currently, we have 2 more NGOs that actively write grant proposals. All people who were backseat drivers, who were saying that you are doing it wrong, we need to do it a different way. People like that, we want to invite them for various working groups. And now they work for the community and they tell people how to work, everyone in their own sphere. Whoever wants does sports. I never said that we will postpone the culture. The director of the Central Culture House, who had to rescue her 6-year-old girl from her house, from her burning house, and had to escape through the garden to save her. She lost her job. She lost her house, and I couldn't tell her, "You lost your job now." No, they kept singing. The 19-year-old pianist woman whose father was executed, for a long time she couldn't touch the piano. But because she was listening to other people play, she finally was able to operate piano. And I think it's a small victory, but a very needed one. This is the thing that is needed to focus on life, to focus on the everyday life things that one needs to continue living, even at the times of war. And the community was brought together because everyone had an opportunity to do whatever they like. Someone dances, someone sings, some help the army with trench candles and masking nets and other things. And this way we are able to come together and develop the community. I do not miss any opportunity. I come to any panel I'm invited to. I always go around. I go abroad and I yell about what happened to our country. In this time I visited even Japan. It's very nice that all the world knows Ukraine now, and we need to prove to the world that we are the people, that we are the living shield for Europe. And our warriors, our guys, our girls are currently protecting not just our mother Ukraine, but the whole world against the horror that attacked Ukraine. Indeed, during the full-scale invasion, Chernihiv and Ivanivska community were really the shield against the further assault of Russia against the north of Ukraine. And we owe a lot to these people. And of course, restoration here should be more active, and support should be given not from the people themselves, but from other stakeholders. You know, your story, Svetlana, is about self-help, about how people try to help themselves in the condition they found in. Let's transit to other speakers. Can you tell a couple of words? How do you organize your cooperation from the point of view of cooperation with the government? What do you think? I have a hospital, I have school. This is what I want to lobby through the Ministry of Renovation to find funds there. And for other things, I will ask donors or partners or other civil society organizations. What exactly is your logic? And the same question to Mr. Serhii. Do you feel that the central level government sufficiently understands the needs of various communities and how to help you? First thing that I thought needs to be done is to bring everything together. We need to do a stock taking of what is destroyed, what is damaged, and to set clear priorities. I was very lucky with my local representatives, deputies. Yes, 5 deputies are fighting, they are in the army, but the rest of them are participating actively. All of them, practically all of them, were under occupation, and they actively participate in this project. So I have someone to rely on advice-wise. I have working groups created, and I actively communicate with my residents through various messengers. I always ask questions. I do polls, surveys about whether they need to build shelter in kindergarten or maybe a clinic. People just participate, they just vote for that, for this or this priority. In Yahidne, they discussed a memorial complex. Do we need to create it or do we not? A lot of things. It was discussed a lot in Kiev. Kiev residents were discussing the same a lot. But in my community, the opinion was very different from what was in Kiev. So, in all these processes, first of all, we created the database for restoration. A computer database. We filter information related to what was destroyed, what was damaged, and we enter the data, what is being rebuilt. We update it with newly rebuilt things. So we have living statistics of what we have, and we have clear priorities set. So, and further, what do you do with these priorities? Do you advocate them on the level of the Ministry of Restoration or in the oblast? That's what I wanted to know, so that other communities that might have less experience or that will have to restore themselves after they are liberated, how to work. First, we need to make projects. Without projects, we cannot move on. If there is a project, then you can throw it wherever. You can present it to the government. You can present it to donors. You have something to propose. But if you don't have anything to show, if you don't have any project, you just say, my school is broken. Any donor will ask, how much do I need to spend to mend it? So we need to show clear estimate of a project, how to restore it. We need to show that the school is very necessary, that this many children use this school. And this is what we need to do. This is how we work. Project-based work is the best. That's what we need to. We'll continue with the algorithm of your success. I implore everyone, it's not so far from Kiev, to visit Ivanivska community. It's a very important example how to effectively engage resources from outside, how to consolidate the community for restoration. Mr. Serhii Peresunko, head of Chernihiv community. If Ivanivska was a shield from the northern direction, Chernihiv community, along with others in Mykolaiv, were the shield in the south. Chernihiv community, Serhii will tell you further. But myself, with my foundation work, I work there, so I know a lot about them. One of the villages in that community was occupied, and it was a front line, so it has massive destruction. So Kiev and Chernihiv region, if this is tragedy, multiply Mykolaiv situation by 2, because they were in fight longer. And also, it's harder because they're further from Kiev. Partners often do not want to visit it, because it's too far. And it's a problem that we are so focused, or our partners are so concentrated on the regions where they can get easier. So it's a challenge. Tell us about, Serhii, about your experience. You recently started the restoration. What were your priorities? What is your experience of working with the government, if any? What is your interaction with oblast administration, and how do you organize engagement of partners for restoration in the community? Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Hello, everyone. Thank you for invitation too. I recently was listening to my colleague, and you know, probably in every village, in every community where there were such tragic events, everyone has the same story. Still, in short, I will have to tell about our story. The consolidation, of course, all Ukrainians are consolidated. We were consolidated and we're still consolidated. Yeah, there are issues, I admit it. We still have issues, even in our community, where we cannot find consensus yet. But this is democracy, right? This is the equal rights. This is what it's all about. About Shyrokinska community. When the full-scale invasion started, the martial law was introduced, and it was the first challenge for the local self-government. Before, we had the written projects that were planned to be implemented in 2022. It was the start of 2022, of course you remember. Everything stalled, everything stopped, and in the end of February, until the middle of March, in the community, it was quite calm, I must admit. What were we doing? We were collecting the necessary things, medical care, medical supplies, generators, fuel for the armed forces of Ukraine. But at the beginning of March, through our community, enemy heavy equipment started moving. We were created self-defense units. We counted them, and we counted about 1,500 heavy equipment units of the enemy moving. In the middle, they started shelling us, and our village, Chervona Dolina, was shelled for 8 hours straight. The bombing started. Before, we didn't know what war is all about. We've heard about it, of course. We've seen it on TV. But when they start shelling and when the population is still there, yes, they asked to evacuate, it's true, but they didn't evacuate. And for 8 hours straight, they start shelling. First dead, first injured, completely demolished houses. And in a very short period of time, 5 or 6 days, 90% of population left the community. First, all the evacuees were children, of course, pensioners, senior citizens. They were first to get evacuated. One village, unfortunately, was occupied, Petrivka. It was quite densely populated, with highest number of residents in our community. And after that, for 8 months straight, we were shelled. The village Shyroke, which is the center of the community, was destroyed almost completely. 95% of it was destroyed. After the hostilities stopped in this village, I don't know how, but only four houses were not damaged. The rest of them were either completely demolished or damaged seriously. Schools, kindergartens, culture houses, healthcare facilities, first aid points, center for providing administrative services was completely destroyed. And when in November our army threw back the enemy to the left bank, we had to return people to our land, right? We had no electricity, we had no internet connection. So we did it through phones. We were calling friends. We call it popular radio, word of the mouth. So that's what we used. And first of all, it was Rayon military administration, then military administration, and of course humanitarian aid. I mean, they provided construction materials, but then we could only give people the film, the nails. We couldn't even arrange the roofing. We couldn't arrange the doors. We only could provide the most basic of shelters. But still, even with film, which this film was not permanent, they were making kind of tents or something, but still they were returning because people wanted to preserve what we had left in our community. How did we contact people? Interaction with the governments. Could you tell us? Yes, I'm getting into this. How did we contact? We just physically gathered in the center because there was no access to internet, there was no electricity. And each Sunday, the authorities, the local representatives, deputies, were gathering people and were asking what to do next. The first, of course, is electricity. Here, we were supported by Rayon electricity office. We were getting we didn't expect that we could do it so fast because in the middle of January we already had electricity. First, we arranged the housing, and later healthcare, then education. And the last one, to return the business, our land users, so that they could return and start working. How to do it? Where to get funds for this? Of course, first of all, we made a list of the objects that we want to restore. We brought it across to the Rayon military administration, to Oblast military administration. We communicated with them, we negotiated with them what can we restore at the cost of the governmental budget, what are the local budget, and what can be taken from donors. So it's a puzzle, right? Today, the Center for Providing Administrative Services is being built, is being newly constructed. Yes, we had to do projects very fast. That's what task. Without projects, nothing will be done. It's true. Today, at the cost of the governmental budget, we are building the Center for Providing Governmental Services. They are producing the estimates for new constructions of the school in the Chervona Dolina. And we asked the donors, we found the donors and engaged donors. We get water supply, tubing to Shyroke Dolina. Thank you, Yulia. We work with you, and we created estimate documentation for Novopetrivska, full reconstruction of water supply system. That's how we work. By the way, I wanted to mention that ULEAD really helped Chervona Dolina, which Serhii mentioned. With support of ULEAD, we are doing their temporary house in the culture house. Shyrokinska community is the community. The Russian destroyed all schools, right? Because Russians were targeting schools. That's why access to education is in dire state. But there are some communities that the partners don't want to reach. They still have children. In Chervona Dolina, you have 174 kids. And the school there destroyed with a heavy bomb, right? The school was, but the House of Culture was not destroyed. And we are now rebuilding, reconstructing, repurposing this House of Culture to a school. So, theoretically, we might rebuild the school. In this, I lack the context. What happens by the time of this great future? Where is this temporary, fast help that everyone needs? Where is this policy? So, Serhii, do you generally understand what is this approach to restoration of the authorities, and why you, as a head of the community in the country which had very successful decentralization reform, how can communities count on the support of the government? How is the policy of restoration set up? Do you understand it as the representative of the community? Because we wanted to communicate with the government. I hope that there will be someone from the government here. Of course, there should be a close cooperation with the military administration of both Rayon and Oblast. In the close cooperation with Oblast, without it, we can do nothing, I say. And the main thing, as was mentioned, projects. If we have projects, we can file them, and we can discuss them. Of course, projects, but I want to discuss here. For example, restoration of school. In Shyrokinsk community, how many schools are destroyed? 2 schools. These are millions of euro and many years probably of work. What's done in the meantime? How do you resolve education issue before that? And this is a question to the Ministry of Restoration. And I like very much the restoration policy. It's not about restoration of school as a building, but restoration of education service. That's what the main thing. We'll return to you. With us, we have Antonella here. Antonella Valmorbida, General Secretary of your Press Secretary of Local Democracy.
A huge experience in participative democracy, in providing cohesion between local governments and central governments. Based on your experience, what practices do you think Ukrainian communities in the situation of war can take aboard to make this cooperation happen? Because in my view, at this very moment, I think this is what really strongly lacks in Ukraine. We are gradually creating this bottleneck when the government is centralizing everything, but oftentimes does not understand the actual situation, actual needs on the ground. So based on the association's experience, what do you think we can take into account? And you have a presentation. If you want, we can put it, yeah?
Yeah, you can put it up, but
I
can also make a short introduction and connecting with the rest of the day, and really saying how much it was inspirational for me, and how much it's important to learn from each other. I think that I would like to also connect my contribution on participatory democracy and what I'm going to say right now also to what was the first panel. So how can we reconstruct better, and maybe how we can, in the way we are reconstructing Ukraine, how we can reconstruct democracy better. So this is also a chance to build a better democracy. And from that perspective, what we learn, not only here in Ukraine, but also in other places where ALDA works in Europe, but also in other places of the neighborhood, is that a better democracy is indeed not only elected institutions, which I understand is also a challenge here in Ukraine, a functioning institution, so where we also have civil servants and structure that can work, but also seen from our perspective, local democracy is based on a community approach. So democracy is more than elections. Democracy is like when we have civil society and citizens being part of it. So I think that the radical change, and that is also important for Ukraine today, is that citizens are not only beneficiary of services, but they are part of democracies themselves, and they are part of policy making, and they are part of the solutions, as we saw from this amazing contribution here. I also think that the new frontier of what we call local democracy is really empowering citizens that they can really be part of the contribution and contributing to local governance and to solutions. We also think that the resilience will come from that, because in now, and as it has been, and in the future, we will have to, because we also, as ALDA, have experience in other post-war areas. We were born in the Balkans in the 90s. And we know that this post-war situation will need cohesive communities. And that is also based on a strong relationship between local authorities and citizens, so that you don't have the citizens there expecting for services and local authorities that will solve all the problems. And we know that it's not going to be like this. The new frontier is, as I said, participative democracy for resilience of democracy. And also there is another concept, which is what we heard from the brilliant participants to the panels today. I've heard about them already. Is that we are talking not only about democratic local communities, but we talk about caring communities. So democracy, as a matter of fact, is probably also about caring about each other. It's about the examples that we heard right now. So is this community caring? Is this community developing institutions, political institutions, but also civil society institutions, which are able to care about each other? So the frontier of democracy, and there are many that are starting talking about that, is caring about each other, as they did here, and this is very likely what will be very important for Ukraine today. My experience about Ukraine started many years ago. I often say in 2012, but probably also before. And I must say that I experienced fantastic cases where I worked with communities where we had local democracy agencies, and I will show you now a couple of slides with a map, where we experience, I mean, the fact that you are saying that there is a bottleneck, but maybe there is a bottleneck a little bit everywhere in Europe, you know. So I think we have to, of course, here we have extreme situation, but I think that this empowerment of participative democracy is useful everywhere in Europe as well, and in particular here in Ukraine. So I wanted to show you a couple of slides about how we are contributing to these sustainable municipalities, preserving cohesion in a time of war. So ALDA has in its own constituency both local authorities and civil society. So our members are from both sides of the coin, and it shows how much for us it's important to have this nexus between local authorities and civil society working together, because for us local governance is a community approach. And as a matter of fact, and we see many of you and in this room, civil society and local authorities, especially at the local level, we are talking about the same people. Because in many cases, there were civil society leaders that then become councillors, and when their mandate is over, they come back to the civil society actors community. So we do this, and the other thing before going straight to the next slide where you have the map of Ukraine, is that for us, and for all of us in this room, local democracy is not an ideology. It's concrete problem solving. So for us, local democracy and local authorities working with civil society is solving problems. Solving problems in environmental issues, in migration issues, in also gender and human rights issues. It regards youth empowerment. All of this is local democracy. So it is really a problem-solving approach. Can I show you? Do I? I thought somebody would have done that for me, but I prefer to do it myself. I think it should work. So I want to share with you, I mean, in Ukraine, we have members, and yesterday we had a very nice meeting with our members. We have 25 members, both local authorities, regional authorities, and civil society groups. And we are applying to Ukraine what we do in other parts of Europe. So we are putting them together, and in these communities we are developing projects as well, which are sometimes small, sometimes big, and we invite and promote this dialogue and this cooperation together. Another, when we can, we also work on the local democracy agencies methodologies, which are locally registered NGOs with a multi-stakeholder and multi-level approach. So today, in the past panels, we were talking about multi-level, so local authorities, regional approach, national approach, but for us, it's also multi-stakeholders, is that we are pushing and promoting local authorities working with civil society. So local democracy agencies are an instrument promoted by the Council of Europe in the 90s, first in the Balkans after the war, and then we have developed them also in Eastern Europe, accompanying the Council of Europe in that part of the world. And we have now 17 local democracy agencies. And those are instruments of, as I said, multi-stakeholder and multi-level cooperation, including European partners, which are part of also our characteristic. So this is a map which is a bit materializing in front of you what are these local democracy agencies. So the blue boxes are where we already have local democracy agencies. So we opened an LDA in Dnipro in 2015, and you can see around the blue box of Dnipropetrovsk region a number of partners. So we are supporting a constant partnership between European and Ukrainian partners, engaging cities, regions, civil society groups, and at the local level, we are animating this partnership. Because another question that we can say is how do we maintain this partnership between, for example, in this case, Ukrainian and European partners. So we are animating this partnership with different kind of projects. So each local democracy agencies has its own action plan where Ukraine doesn't become only a problem, but where Ukraine becomes also a resource. So what do you do in terms of youth empowerment? What do you do in terms of environmental protection? So it means that our European partners are not only giving, but they are also receiving. Because for all of us, Ukraine should not be only the problem, but also a resource. So that is also allowing a mutual growth of this partnership. We had a Mariupol event, LDA open in 2017, and we, of course, moved all the people and staff to other places, and now they are working a little bit scattered around Ukraine, but they have a place to work here in Kiev. And there again, we are working on the community of Mariupol to support them with a lot of partners from Europe. Or, for example, we have new municipalities interested to understand how to help a community in exile. We open and sign a memorandum of understanding for Odessa with several partners there, and all the other LDAs are now in the making. We are connected with the pilot initiatives with Yuriy that we are really thankful for this initiative, for engaging some of the partners that are part in the universe of the cohort of Yuriy in some of our developing LDAs, in particular in the Kharkiv region and in the Dnipro region. And why do we think that this local democracy agencies methodology could be useful for Ukraine in particular? Because this multi-stakeholder approach, as I said, local authorities and civil society working together are like a guarantee for this cohesion. It will mean small and big programs. I mean, local authorities and citizens in these communities will need to restore trust. It means working together every day on some small and big initiatives. It is a long-term partnership, because when I am talking about Ukraine in Europe, I'm saying that Ukraine will need big help and long help, long friendship, going through a very long journey. And I want to say that one of the LDAs that we have in Bosnia and Herzegovina is celebrating today 25 years of activities. So, you know, pretty long friendship. And I often say that our local democracy agencies brought more in the Balkans and also here in Ukraine people than anyone else. And this people-to-people cooperation is very important to build relationship, and that will help you also to strengthen this European approach that you are having. It's flexible and reactive, because every year local democracy agencies are redefining the action plan depending on the situation. And we know that here in Ukraine things will change drastically every months. So we need to have this kind of flexible approach, redefining the action plan every year. It's a city diplomacy as well. So the mayors from Europe are talking with mayors here, and citizens from Europe are talking with citizens from Ukraine. So this city diplomacy overcoming and adding to the other diplomacy will be very important. For example, our local democracy agencies were established in Serbia when there was a total national embargo on Serbia. So when there still was Milosevic in place. And so this city and community to community allowed a connection even when it was not possible. I would say that it also creates opportunities of NGOs and advocacy work in European level, because I will conclude my contribution here now. Ukraine is heading to a very cumbersome process to European integration. And I often say that European integration and your access to the EU will be voted by European citizens. Don't forget about this. And those who are going to decide if you are going to be in the EU or not, they are not here. They are in Brussels. It's the Council at unanimity which is going to decide whether Ukraine will become member of the EU or not, or even its accession journey. So what we do with our initiatives is that we are telling to European citizens why it is important to fight for Ukraine. So we have all this partnership in any, down south in Italy or somewhere in Portugal, don't forget that you need Portugal voting for you, and not only Poland and Slovenia. You need those people over there. So with this friendship between Europeans, and we really truly believe, as somebody said, that you are fighting our fight, we are convincing Europeans that this is a collective fight for democracy, for us, this is, I will say, a word in Italian, it è un lavoro certosino. It means, certosino means very small. We do very small work in one meeting after another, talking about one person after another. And this very small work makes a mass of support. So that's why also we think that meeting brilliant people like you, and they are on the panel and in this room, will probably make small drops, but an immense mass of support.
Antonella, first of all, thank you so much for what you do for Ukraine, for the communities, and for making sure that every year, well, maybe not every, but at least quite a lot, European citizens still remember that this war is ongoing, and also remember that Ukraine is not a problem. Ukraine is a solution to many problems. And just a quick question to you, because there are a lot of communities who listen to us now online. Practical matters. Are they able to access the association? If yes, how if there are willing communities to join, how are they actually able to do that?
Yes, our objective is ALDA is to become a big alliance of like-minded people. So very often I'm asked, when will you stop? I don't know. So the more members we have from Ukraine, the better it is. ALDA has a facilitation now for members from Ukraine. Our governing board accepted members from Ukraine without payment. So there is a facility in this sense. And those who are like-minded, they are welcome in our organization. Yuriy is a fantastic member of ALDA, for example, and there are many more also here. For the local democracy agencies, there is also an open door. And I want also to say that in this sense, we, as ULEAD is working, we need to be pragmatic. So we need to find partners, both here in Ukraine, but also in Europe, that have a sense of working together.
So that means that if community applies or sends you an email like, Antonella, I really want to join the association, they would better come with the understanding what would they contribute to it, right?
Of
Not
course,
that financially, but...
of course, I think that I always say, I said it also yesterday to a connection with the European Economic Social Committee, I would say money is both never the problem and always the problem. It's all together, And as they said, I mean, it's never the problem in the sense that if there is more money than good ideas. I mean, this is a little bit a basic statement, but this is about truth. You can, if you have ideas, plans that are for the common good of the community, it's more, more likely that you will find good resources. And in this we align very much with ULEAD perspective.
І тут я думаю, що українські громади можуть розповісти дуже багато.
I believe Ukrainian communities can say a lot about their experiences of cohesion of their residents, and this can be helpful and interesting and important for the same communities in other countries of Europe. Yuriy, you have the pleasure of being the last, and as yet we are pressed for time. As usual, Yuriy Stepanets, Executive Director of the Association Civic Initiatives in Ukraine, civil society, civic organizations. This is integral part of the mechanism named Ukraine, and civil society helps in all the tragedy and crisis situations that happen in our country. Yuriy, if you can, could you please tell us where do you see the role of your organization and generally of the civic organizations in restoration, preservation of the cohesion, yet that we are not alleged, that we are just grant eaters, as they joke here. There is such a discourse. Quite often civic support is perceived, well, you just want to make money on it. There is a mistake. I am not executive director, I am chairman of the board, but it doesn't really matter. Is it less responsibility or more responsibility? It's hard to say. I believe it's a nicer part of it because I can talk more to the people, to our members. This is a nicer part of it, a better part of it. So many good things and important things were discussed before me that it's really difficult for me to say anything important. Yet we shall discuss our experience and what is our vision. About the grant eaters, I have the opinion that, and this is based probably on in the countries of the European Union, the civic organizations is not something standalone. Shall we support civic organizations because they are civic organizations? No, they are simply a very good instrument. I believe this is one of the best instruments which is very close to people, and it is also based on people's opinions, and it has a good connection with local government, and this instrument is very effective. This is demonstrated by the experience of Western Europe and Eastern Europe. The more central government delegates of the authority, first we speak to the local government level, and the next stage, who is even closer to people, are civic organizations. If to speak about restoring the country, restoration of the country, I made a small presentation of a few slides. Very, very shortly, we're speaking a lot of restoring the country. And if we come back to the first meetings which took place back in the year 2022, there was an important conference in Lugano. On that conference, after very lengthy and important discussions, 7 principles were endorsed. 4 of them are on the local level. This is what depends on ourselves, on how good shall we prepare, how well shall we prepare the discussion, how well shall we define the problem, to what extent can we involve all the stakeholders. This will affect the restoration in a good way, or maybe it will not, if we fail. In the past year, 2023, with support of Yuriy, we held 230 dialogue events in 108 communities. Everything I will discuss now to the largest and is based on this experience. We can say that for the first time we came to communities, we felt the need of people to talk. Those were different communities from Chernihiv Oblast to Transcarpathia. In Chernihiv Oblast and in the communities of Transcarpathia, people were ready to talk. They wanted to talk. And the government, on the other hand, was happy that they could talk to the large extent in a safe manner, because the dialogue makes it possible to safely talk of their complicated things. I don't know what happens in other countries, yet in our country, the local governments are afraid to talk directly to citizens because it's not clear what's on their minds, how will they respond to different ideas. So the dialogue is an instrument, a specific instrument, which makes it possible under safe conditions to discuss the challenges faced by communities. Via the dialogue, it's much easier to plan the restoration. We spoke, and Antonella said before, that finding money is not a big problem if it is based on good ideas. And we can only add if those ideas are based on the needs of the people. In that case, everything becomes much more clear and much more understandable. When the idea for restoration is not on the office of the public official, and yet based on the discussion and the ideas in the street. Therefore, this is always better. The dialogues are very important. At the moment, when we speak about the internally displaced persons, we can speak of new residents. We can also speak of the old and new residents. What we were surprised about when we held the dialogues in the community, the people really were happy that they are heard when they saw that their government responds, because hearing people is not fearful, and they tell very interesting proposals. Therefore, dialogues are important to hear the old and new members of the community and to invent some solutions for the problems. The dialogues are a very good instrument because it allows, to some extent, to solve some old or frozen conflicts. Maybe they are not manifested, and under safe conditions, we can discuss more or less well with a group of people who are interested, with stakeholders, and one can solve such a problem. Also, one can use the dialogues for integration of residents. Also, the dialogues are important in order to involve all the residents to problem solving. Of course, one can talk to elected officials and also other stakeholders, and yet when we talk on such moderated dialogues, this is quite an open process, and we can achieve more. Briefly speaking, what instruments about involvement of citizens towards restoration as well as not only restoration, which can be used. I have prescribed a few pieces of advice, which from our experience of the past year are quite important. First, the more we speak with communities, the better. There cannot be too much communications. There are never too much discussions. We shall request the audience to read the slides, and yet we have 2 minutes. I would like to ask you, for those communities who would like the dialogue, like Olena and Serhii, they have their positive experiences, so they did it having no methodology, simply by their own understanding how to interact with their citizens. How for other communities, can you give practical advice, how they can use this instrument with your support? Can you contact the association, you will visit them, give them a training, or do the mediation? How does it happen? How to use on practice everything you described? If there is any support, maybe Yuriy will provide this support. Thanks to Yuriy's support, we could publish the handbook. We spoke of one book which can be bought, and this book is free of charge, can be also downloaded on the website of Yuriy, and it describes in detail the experience of this project and step-by-step instructions how to hold a moderated dialogue in the community. We all know what is a dialogue when people communicate, two or more people communicate, and yet, speaking of moderated dialogue in the community, this is certain algorithm of actions, how to step by step create the conditions of safe discussion when representatives of local government do not have any fears to speak openly with local residents. And local residents feel that they're not just heard, also not just listened, but also heard. There are a few simple things how to prepare that. I call you to download this book. I will not discuss every aspect, and yet it includes a methodology and also a particular experience in those communities where we had. One can approach your association if necessary. If it is necessary to have a mediation, you can find the resources and help. Yes, indeed, you may refer to our address our association to find also other contacts in this book of other organizations which are involved in the dialogue and mediation. Thank you very much indeed. I will speak of education. In the education before the big war and even now, the big problem is optimization of schools. And now we need to restore them, not just optimize. To explain why do we restore here and not there. Serhii had his own story, how to explain the residents why we cannot in Shyroke to rebuild the school in Chervone. We need to build and we need to carry children. This is an important element of dialogue with community, and such practical developments can help. We still have a few minutes. I believe that the most appropriate, the most valuable is to give a few words to Olena and Serhii as the ones whose opinions from the communities must be heard. This discussion is about cohesion, and you, Olena, began in a good way about the history, about the story of your community. The situation is changing. What was the status of condition of the residents of the community in April of 2022 and what it is now is probably different, I presume. Like the entire country, we experience the emotional waves. Some restoration must be faster, yet it is slower. There is a frustration, and there is disappointment, lack of understanding how to live further on. How do you work with that, with the cohesion under conditions of the war, which continues, and restoration, which does not take place as quickly as one would expect? A question to you and also Serhii. What I would like to say, this is not that smooth in the restoration. The government did a lot with e-restore, and all communities which are not in the occupation have the opportunity. They actively use this program, e-restore, giving homes to people. And yet, I would like to see Madam Azarkhina, because I prepared the question to her. Always at the meetings, when I meet her, I'm trying to move the e-restore forward. For such community as mine, it's important for me to keep people in the community. It's most important. And yet, regretfully for my community, the opportunity is lost. What opportunity is lost? 2 years passed. In 2 years, under e-restore, we receive for fully destroyed property either certificate or money for restoration. Yet 2 years passed and people are not lazy. They don't sit and wait. And what people could do, they did. And for most of people, there is a box of the house. What to do next? How to finish the house? And we ask the questions and we write the letters and we ask during the meetings what to do for those people. Those people who had their summer house and they bought this. And the disadvantage to our 2 years past, people are tired of living in their relatives' homes. They just left the community. They bought the homes and left for other communities to live. Therefore, a big advice to other communities that will be out of the occupation as soon as possible and will restore, that there is an opportunity to use all the possible resources available in order to keep the people in the community. and to use all the opportunities for the youth, including TikTok, Instagram, whatever they have. We involve everything. For old ladies, leaflets, social workers. All the information must be conveyed to people, even for every mayor, deputy, other deputy mayor, other employees of the council must meet people in the street, just in the street, not sitting back in the office. When I'm asked when you have, when there are the days for meeting the citizens, I don't have such restrictions. People can see myself on the street every time. So do your best to keep people in the communities, because there is no Ukraine with no people.
Є відновленню. Да, по є відновленню. Давайте по є відновленню. Ми втрачаємо.
About the відновлення system, we are losing.
Що є відновлення.
Restore. If in e-restore we leave people can file documents and can rebuild or restore their houses and live in a village or in a city to work and live. For destruction, maybe it's not in use for you. In our village, 1.5 million hryvnias is the cost of a house. Do you think a person, after receiving this money, will build this house? No, they will go to a city and buy some apartment there or something. We didn't request changes here. Maybe we are wrong. Maybe the people should have a choice how they want to use these funds for the lost house, to buy it here in our community or in other place. For us, it would be best if it would be written that these funds can be used only for building a house in the same community where it was lost. That would be better for us. As to civilian population, we have e-restore from the government help. For local budget helps us too, and of course donors do help us too. They come, they help with construction materials, and there are construction teams who do repairs of their houses, and 60% of citizens already returned to our community. And after liberation of Kherson region, and when the shelling in your area became less frequent, did they return? Well, 60% returned. But currently, 46 people came to us, and there is a problem with houses that were completely destroyed, and people don't have documents for these houses, because and people cannot prove that they owned it. So because they have many children, these families have many children. The chat has a question from one of the Norwegian partners, I think, about the prepared modular housing that you mentioned here. And the question was, do you need it? Do you need these modular houses? And if yes, give contacts of the communities that are interested. The organizers can help us. I wanted to add, we are talking about restoration of our houses that were destroyed, to rebuilding them, but we must not forget that the war still is going on, and the war is not far from our community. We always hear the explosions. We still have destruction. Our neighboring communities have destruction. It's true. In the Ivanivska community, there are still families, there are still children, and the restoration is not just rebuilding a school. It's thinking how can we restore access to education here and now. I'm very thankful to this talk, Yuriy. I think we need a dialogue between the various branches of power, because there are different opinions what tools are lacking, how to start consolidation. I'm thankful to you, lead, for giving opportunity to the communities to voice their needs. Even more so to the those who are not to the communities that are not central, that are not always heard. And I'm giving back the word to you. Thank you to the participants of this panel. Thank you, Yana. Our task was today to represent the broadest possible experience, to take a look at the restoration from many sides, and for restoration of the sustainable communities. And in all three panels, we had cross-cutting thoughts, which says that the truth is always on the conduct. All panels were saying that you need to ask people directly. We could have to go to level of separate people, of separate houses, not to wait. Serhii is right. The war goes on. We don't know how long will it last. We don't know what other populated localities will suffer. But we need to plan it already now. We don't want to have this standard school designs. We all studied in the same schools. They had the same Soviet standard issue school. We don't want that. We want them customized for our needs. We need to rebuild it back better compared to what was before, which does not mean to install new windows, new plastic windows instead of wooden frames. It means something different. And also another cross-cutting issue is interaction between the communities and the government, both local and central. And it must not be one-sided. Local communities must be an actor. And on the way, the accession to European Union is also an issue. And without being consolidated, only if we are together. Without unity, we cannot face this challenge. And our challenges are great. So, thank you very much for participation, to those who were listening, to those who participated, both offline and offline. I'm sure that you had new ideas, and you have your own vision. You had your own vision, but maybe you had some new thoughts and new ideas how to build new strong communities and how to secure stable and sustainable restoration. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.